Hello everyone. Once again, I welcome you all to my channel e-Politica, everything that you want to know on political science. I am Dr. Susengfa Gogoi, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, North Lakhimpur College Autonomous. Today, we are going to discuss on one of the important concepts on political theory that is called justice. And in this particular module, we would talk about the meaning, nature, and types of justice. The objectives of this module is to understand the meaning of the term justice, to discuss on few definitions on justice, to explain few elements of justice, to learn the characteristics of justice, and to highlight on different types of justice. So after you listen to this module, you would be able to understand what do we mean by justice, what are the elements of justice, what are the different perspectives on justice, what are the characteristics of justice, and what are the tribes of justice. So that those things you could answer after listening to this module. Let us begin. Now, before we talk about justice and its meaning and its types, there are a few things that we need to understand, contextualize the concept called justice. In our everyday life, we tend to hear about the term called justice in many ways. For example, we heard about justice for Dalits, we heard about justice for Nirbhaya, we heard that justice delayed is justice denied, we heard about injustice, we heard about justice for the poor, and we also heard about justice for the women. Now, in a daily basis, we tend to experience the term called justice in different orientations, or in different platforms, or in different ways. For example, a child could have been explained or complained to his parents about the injustice done to him by their parent themselves in allotting the reward between him and his sibling, claiming that he has been least provided in terms of the reward, then it is an injustice caused to him. So therefore, the term called justice has been known as a very, very important concept in our lives. So also in political theory. Therefore, the concept of justice has been considered as one of the important concepts in political theory or in other aspects of social sciences. Now, when we talk about a term called justice, the idea of justice, it occupies a center stage both in ethics and also in legal and political philosophy. Now, as you know, the idea of justice therefore can be understood both as a theory and also as practice. Now, when we say that justice can be understood as a theory, it basically means that the idea of justice has been related with many important concepts theoretically. For example, it related to the idea of distributing resources, distributing goods, allocation of rewards, allocation of punishment, process of giving that punishment, process of giving that reward. So therefore, the idea of justice has been discussed theoretically from different perspectives. And the idea of justice could also understand from a practice perspective. Now, when we say that justice is also can be considered as a practice, it basically means that we want to apply justice in everyday life. Therefore, the terminology called justice has been always linked up with the question of injustice, because we call justice as that situation or outcome of a situation where there is no injustice. Therefore, in practice, in everyday life, we want to provide or establish justice by giving what it is due to someone without being discriminating others. Therefore, the idea of justice can be understood both theoretically as well as practically. Theoretically, because it is discussed by different thinkers differently by taking positions on justice. how it is been distributed, how it is been entertained, what are the process of entertainment of justice, whether justice has been given to a particular segments of people. So there are different theoretical positions in understanding the concept of justice. And in reality and in practice, as a human being, as an individual, we want to get equal kind of respect, equal position in the society, equal position in the political system, equal economic rights. Therefore, justice is also can be considered from a practical perspective. Now, before we go more deep into the concept of justice, let us look at the etymological meaning of the term called justice. Again, when you talk about the etymological meaning of justice, there could be different perspectives on from where the term justice emerged. For example, some say that the word justice, it can be linked up from the word called justitia, and this term called justitia is an old French word which mean righteousness and equity. So righteousness basically mean that something which is right, something inside which there is a possibility of doing good to someone, a positive way of looking at certain things. So where the consequences of an activity or an action is right, when the motive or ambition of an action is positive, right, then it is called as righteousness, something which is to be considered as positively important for the growth of an individual. The second one is called equity. The term justice, therefore, it derived from a word called justitia, which mean that every single individual in a society to be considered as equal. So therefore, justice also mean to establish righteousness and to establish equity. The second etymological meaning of the term justice can also be linked to be referred to a Latin word called justus. Justus means upright and just. So when we say upright and just, it basically means that justice is a term that believes the ambition of a society is to allocate the goods equally among the individuals, equally among the members of the society. So therefore, by justice, it means that how can we assure right, how can we assure justly allocate what it is been due to an individual, how the resources to be divided among the people, how the recognition of equality can be entertained. So that is what we call as upright and just. And the third etymological meaning of justice, it is originated from another Latin word called jus, which means to bind. To bind means you want to combine everyone, you want to bind everyone. So the idea of justice, therefore, not to exclude a particular segment of people, but to treat everyone within a similar context. For example, if you talk about a legal justice, we are talking about a legal justice in that situation where every single individual of a society to be recognized legally equal for punishment and reward for the similar kind of act. If a person is convicted for murder, he has to be punished similarly, no matter what social position, what political position, what economic background he belongs. Therefore, just basically mean to binding people. How do we not discriminate? How can we assure equity among people? How can we assure rightness among the people? So therefore, it is binding people together without being discriminated. So this is a basically etymological meaning of the justice. So from this etymological meaning, what we have understood is that the idea of justice therefore mean fairness and rightness. So therefore, the idea of justice can be understood as a means for fairness. Now, what is fair? Now, fairness basically mean a process of giving something to an individual through a means where there is no option for discrimination, where there is no option of showing interest to one particular community, where people are to be benefited largely without being discriminated, without being left out, where everyone to be recognized as same, as equal. So therefore, there has to be a fairness in allocating the resources and also in the process of allocation. So therefore, many people say that whenever we talk about justice, we are talking about a condition of living where every single individual will get a fair amount of allocation and distribution of resources, a fair chance of opportunity to participate, and also a fair chance of getting the reward. So therefore justice can be considered as a fairness or rightness. But in a very simple meaning, therefore justice can be considered as something which is morally correct. Now when we talk about justice, therefore it is a morally correct concept. Why? Because whenever we talk about justice, we are talking about a positive good to the people. We are not talking about the bad, that is something which has happened to an individual. Something bad has been happened to an individual, that cannot be considered as justice. So justice can be considered as something which is good for an individual. So therefore it is a concept which is morally correct. So it do not want to hurt people, it do not want to discriminate people. Rather, by justice we mean to give the people a chance for equal participation, a chance for getting equal respect, for chance for getting equal status inside the society. So therefore it is a concept which is morally correct. Now let us take few definitions of justice, then things could be more clear to understand. The first definition, it was made by none other than political philosopher Plato. He said, I quote, "Justice is a right condition of human soul and natural demand of human nature." I unquote. Now if you look at into this definition, what Plato said, he said that the idea of justice is a right condition of human soul and it is a natural demand of human nature. Therefore Plato linked up the idea of justice with human nature. He said that the justice is one of the important virtues of human nature. It was in the human nature, and he therefore developed an idealist idea of justice. He thought that justice is an ideal concept. Why it is an ideal concept? Because every individual is different, with their own calibers, with their own capacities. So with their capacities, if they are getting the opportunity to enjoy or to enhance or use best of their capacities, can be considered as justice. Therefore he was talking about a functional specialization. He said that there are three categories of virtues that every individual holds. These are wisdom, courage, and appetite. And all these three basic instincts of men or individual made them three different categories of people. So therefore if these three categories of people are giving the opportunity to enhance that quality of them or instinct of them, then it could be considered as justice. So therefore non-interference and also functional specialization can be considered as one important dimension of justice by Plato. Therefore he linked up the idea of justice with human nature. He said that it is inside the human nature that justice can be prevailed, that to enjoy what you are best at. The second definition was made by Rawls. Rawls said that, I quote, "Justice is the first virtue of social institutions." I unquote. Now according to Rawls, there are four virtues which are important for the establishment of social institutions. What are those four virtues? For example, justice, knowledge, courage, and self-esteem. So among these four virtues, according to Rawls, justice is the first virtue, and it is one of the most important virtues for a social institution. So if a social institution, to get the legitimacy from the people, the acceptance from the people, it must have this first virtue, that is called justice. Therefore he was more concerned about justice from a distributive perspective. He thought that the responsibility of a social institution is to ensure, to distribute the goods, the rewards of the society. So he was more concerned about disseminating justice among people. So he was an advocate of distributive justice. The third definition was made by Institutes of Justinian. I quote, "Justice is the constant and perpetual will to render to each his due." I unquote. Now if you look at into this definition, what these Institutes of Justinian said, it said that the idea of justice is a constant concept. It was a perpetual will. Perpetual will mean it's a will of the individual which a person do not want to change at any cost. And how that non-changing will of an individual can be fulfilled, it can be fulfilled by rendering what it is due to an individual. Let me explain with an example, then things could be more clear. Imagine a doctor who has the degree of MBBS. If he was not allowed to practice on medicine or to experience on medicine, probably his degree would be completely futile. So being as a doctor, he should have that liberty to practice, his skill, his knowledge on patients by giving proper treatment. So therefore, if that due liberty is not been entertained to him, can that person's perpetual will, what was his will? That will was to become a doctor. Can it be fulfilled? No. So therefore, if somebody deserves something from the system, something from the society, and if it is the only will of him, and if it is given, then that is called as justice. So therefore, according to these institutes of Justinian, justice is a constant concept. It is a perpetual will. And how this perpetual will, permanent will, can be fulfilled? It can be fulfilled by giving what it is due to an individual. The next definition was made by Dr. Raphael. He said, I quote, justice protects the rights of the individual as well as the order of the society. So this is very, very important definition. If you look at into this definition, what Raphael said, he said that the idea of justice is related with both individuals and also with the society. Now when we talk about individuals, he said that why do we need justice? We need justice to protect what? To protect the rights of the individual. So how the rights of the individual can be protected? For that we need a particular mechanism, and that particular mechanism is called that justice. And secondly, he said that not only protection of rights of the individual is important. If you want to establish a society, justice in a society or in a nation, you must also look at how to establish order in the society. So therefore, he was talking about justice mainly from two perspectives. First, by giving or protecting the rights of the individual, and secondly, also by establishing order in the society. Imagine if in a society where every single individual has been given the liberty to pursue private property. Okay, so A, B, C, D, E, F, X, Y, Z, any person have been given a liberty to procure private property. Now that right has been given, okay, that is fine. But if there is no mechanism to see whether by while enjoying this private property, if the individuals are coming into a conflict, if there is no check and balance, then what will happen? Then the society would be completely chaotic. There would be a situation of chaos. Everybody would try to maximize their private property, and in return conflict occurs and the society collapses. So therefore, when we talk about justice, we should not only talk about the rights of the individual, but also by looking at how to establish order in the society, how to ensure that rights of the individual can be protected with harmony with others. So therefore, Dr. Raphael is very correct when he said that the idea of justice is not only related with the idea of protection of rights of the individual, but also with the order of the society. Okay, the next definition, it was made by Salmon. He said, I quote, justice means to distribute the due share to everybody. This is the same way it has been said by Institute of Justinian. Salmon also said that justice basically means to distribute what it is due to everybody. So he was more concerned about giving what it is due to individuals, same way that it is said by Institute of Justinian. So he was more into distributive kind of a justice system. He said that justice must be distributed among every individual, the due they deserve, the deserving amount of justice to be given. The last definition was made by C.E. Merriam. C.E. Merriam said, I quote, justice consists in a system of understandings and a procedure through which each is accorded what is agreed upon as fair. I unquote. Now if you look at into this definition, what C.E. Merriam said, he said that the idea of justice, it consists in a system of understanding. So for him, the idea of justice is an understanding. It is a procedure. Okay, so it is a justice is a system. It is a procedure. What procedure? It is a procedure through which we can accorded, agreed upon as fair. We are talking about a procedure which is a fair procedure of giving what it is due to the individual. So he said that when you talk about justice, we are not talking about the result. We are not talking about the end product, what it is being distributed. No. Miriam is also concerned about how that product has been given to the people, how the results, outcome have been given to the people. So he was more concerned about the procedure. So therefore, if you look at into this definition, two things are very clear. There are two different perspectives in understanding justice. One of the people who believe that justice is merely distributive, because you want to ensure that the resources, the outcomes, the results, the benefits of the society to be distributed. So what you are concerned about, what to be distributed, what is the end product, what would be what people would get from the system. So you are more concerned about the consequences, and so that is what we call as distributive justice. The second set of philosophers who believe that no, justice cannot be only considered as an end product or the aim of an individual, not only considered as a will of an individual, but when you talk about justice, we must also consider about the procedure of getting into that will, getting into that goal. So therefore they are more concerned about the procedure that involves in getting those outcomes. So therefore they are talking about procedural justice. So therefore broadly these two school of thought called distributive justice and procedural justice was developed by these philosophers by looking at what does it mean as a concept of justice. Now by looking at these definitions, let us now move on. What are the three criteria of justice? We can call it also the elements of justice. Now broadly, whenever we talk about elements of justice, broadly there are three elements without which we cannot talk about justice. Whenever we have to talk about justice, we must also have to talk about these three things. What are they? These are called equality, merit, and need. So equality, merit, and need are the three criteria of justice. What does it mean? Equality. Now when you talk about equality, we are basically talking about recognition of equality. See, every society has got diversity inside it. They have got different peoples, based on color, race, language, religion, gender. So there are different people, ethnicity. So if you are talking about justice, you must also ensure that you will give equality to all these diverse people. So that is why when we talk about justice, the first thing that we need to entertain is to establish equality. If there is no equality, there will be no justice. For example, why do you think that the women in India still are fighting for the injustices done on them in the means of patriarchy, in the means of economic exploitation, in the means of political deadlocks? Why women are always fighting for justice? Because there is a gross inequality that still persists in India. Women are still considered as secondary in terms of men, right? They are not getting that equal amount of representation in the system. Therefore the idea of equality is very, very important element while talking about justice. The second element is called merit. Now whenever you talk about merit, it basically means that every individual is of different calibers. You must admit that not single individuals are same. No, every single individuals are different from their own calibers, own capacities. They have their own capacities. Some are physically fit, some are mentally. So mentally, emotionally, physically, every individuals are different from each other. Now when we talk about justice from a merit perspective, it basically means that you would encourage reward. When you talk about justice, it also to encourage reward. Reward to whom? Reward to the most meritorious persons. Now what does it mean? It means, suppose for example, in an exam 50,000 students have applied, and 50,000 out of the 50,000 students, 46,000 students have wrote the examination. Now among these 46,000 students, you would give a special privilege to be considered as the toppers. And who are those toppers? The toppers are those students who would get maximum numbers other than others, in terms of, in comparison to that of others. So therefore being meritorious out of the other 45,999, that one single individual would be considered as topper. And being a topper, he will get certain privileges, obviously. Maybe a free seat for higher education, free admission for higher education courses, that kind of. So therefore merit is very important, so when you talk about justice, it also to be considered on merit. But while talking about rewards and merit, justice also ensure that okay, we will provide special attention, special privilege to be given to the meritorious persons, that is fine. But while giving merit, we must also ensure equality of opportunity. Those who are also not at the same par with other, and those who did not prove their merit in comparison to that of others, they should also get the opportunity to prove their merit. You never know that whether A is suppose a meritorious guy in a particular classroom, but there was no examination held till now. So you never know whether B, C, or X is equally meritorious with A. So therefore, these other students, other people should also get the opportunity to compete. So therefore, when we talk about justice, this criteria is very important. Merit is also considered as a very, very important component of justice. The third one is called need. Now, need or desert has been considered as a very, very important concept when you talk about justice. See, every individual has got different kinds of needs. Now, what is justice? The justice is to ensure the basic needs or to fulfill the basic needs of individual. Now, for example, when you say that okay, the government has done injustice to the poor, only when the poor were not given that opportunity, only when the needs of the poor were not being fulfilled. Therefore, when you talk about justice, we should also give importance to the need, and the needs of individuals are definitely not going to be same. So it is always context dependent. So within a particular context, the need of an individual would be different. So therefore, the government should look at, the state should look at those needs from a context perspective. So therefore, justice is also need based. How do we fulfill the needs of the individuals? So therefore, these are the three criteria or elements of justice without whose we cannot understand the concept of justice. If we have to talk about justice, we have to talk about equality. If we have to talk about merit, we have to talk about justice, we have to talk about merit. If we have to talk about justice, we also have to talk about the needs of individuals. So these three elements compose the idea of justice. Now, let us talk about the characteristics of justice. Now, the first characteristics after the discussion made so far is that justice is a moral concept. Why it is a moral concept? Because it is something related with the idea of good, the idea that is related with the good to the humanity, something good for man. So when you talk about justice, you basically talking about giving something beneficial to individual, something which is right, something which is good to men. So therefore it is a moral concept. Second one is justice is related to mutual relationships of individuals living in society. Now, for example, when you talk about justice, you cannot talk about a single individual out of the society, because every individual is a part of the society, and being as a part of the society, every individual is related to each other. So justice, therefore, it is a concept which is based on the mutual relationships of individuals living in society. So a justice can be given largely to everyone. It is a platform to ensure maximum number of benefits good to a maximum number of people. The third one is called justice is related to all aspects of human behavior in society. So this is very important. Now, when you talk about justice, the idea of justice, as we have discussed so far, it is related to the idea of human behavior. Now, when do we say justice? I told you that justice is something where there is no injustice. And how the injustice happens? Injustice happens due to the human behavior. For example, suppose a particular class of people has been exploiting another class. So that exploitation is a human behavior. It is a human behavior. Now, if you want to change that human behavior, for example, eradication of poverty, eradication of caste system, eradication of untouchability, eradication of patriarchy. So these kind of human behavior, if you want to eradicate them, then justice can be established. Therefore, the laws, the courts, these are set to regularize these unhealthy behavior of men. So the unhealthy behaviors like exploitation, dominance, ignorance, these kind of things. If you want to eradicate them, then only justice can be established. Therefore, the idea of justice, it is related with the aspects of human behavior. The fourth characteristics is justice also mean fair distribution of equal rights, opportunities, and facilities to all. So this point has already been discussed, that the idea of justice is basically is related with the idea of distribution. What distribution? Fair distribution. It has to be fair. Fair means it has to be something which is transparent, without being giving importance to one particular class of people. Therefore, how the rights, opportunities, facilities can be distributed fairly among everyone, that is what we consider as justice. The fifth characteristic is the function of justice is to coordinate individual interests with the interests of the society. So this is very important. I told you that not as we have talked about earlier, that in one of the definitions I told you that when we talk about justice, it is not only important important to talk about the rights of the individual. What is equally important also to talk about the of the society. So therefore, in this particular point, there must be a balance established between the individual and the society, so that justice can be established. If we give more importance to individual and giving less importance to society, or vice vis-a-vis, then probably we will not understand the justice, or justice cannot be accomplished. So therefore, there's a healthy balance is required between individual and society. And why it is important? Because so that the rights and the punishments which is due to an individual can be given. If the balance is not there, then probably one set of people would enjoy extreme benefits, and the other people will always face the injustices. Therefore, institutions like feudalism, patriarchy, has been always criticized. Why? Because a particular set of people are always enjoying the rights and violating the rights of others. So there was no coordination, there was no balance between the society and the individual, and only a justice can ensure that kind of balance. So this is another important characteristics of justice. The next one is justice is a primary value. Now there are different values in a society. For example, what are the other values like liberty, equality, property? So these are other values in a society. So among these other values, one of the important, primary, most important value in a system is called justice. The last one, justice has several dimensions. That simply mean that we cannot have a single concept of justice, or we cannot understand justice from a one perspective. It has different kind of perspective. For example, social justice, economic justice, political justice, legal justice. So therefore, the idea of justice have been always multifold. It's manifold. There are different ways to explain what do we mean by justice. These are the characteristics of justice. Now we would talk about the types of justice. Now, broadly, justice can be classified as formal and informal justice. So broadly, justice can be classified as formal and informal justice. By formal justice, we are basically talking about the formal procedure or formal institution that involves in providing justice to the people. And by informal justice, we are talking about the everyday substantive kind of justices, where people are getting justice not by some proper constitutionally recognized procedure of entertaining justice, but enjoying it through customary laws, traditional institutions, local governance kind of system. So therefore, justice can be broadly classified as formal and informal. Formal basically representing the procedural kind of justice, and informal justice basically representing the substantive justices. We would discuss about these things in the next modules. Now there are 4 types of justice we need to be discussed today. So there are 4 types of justice which are more important to understand justice as a concept. The first one is called social justice. Now this particular concept called social justice has been one of the most popular concepts in justice, because in every society people are facing some degree of exploitation, some degree of discrimination from other class or other category of people. So those people who are being exploited, who are being oppressed, they also need to get equal amount of rights, equal amount of status in the society. So therefore, the idea of social justice therefore linked up with few concepts. For example, by social justice we mean ensuring equality in society. How do we ensure equality in society? That nobody is different, everyone is same. So in a very positive note, it means that every individual to be considered as same, equal. Social justice also means non-discrimination. It means that you cannot discriminate people in terms of caste, in terms of class, in terms of race, gender. There shall be no discrimination in the society. It also means equal distribution of social facilities. Now the social facilities should be equally distributed. For example, the right for getting married. the marriage, starting of a family, community property, religion. These kind of social facilities must be equally distributed. And by social justice, it also means, this is very important, is to reconstruction of social order. Now, when we talk about social justice, we not only talk about ensuring equality, ensuring non-discrimination, ensuring equal distribution of social facilities. We would also talk about reconstruction of social order. Now, every social order has got its own different own ways of mobilizing people. For example, within a caste system, there are four categories of people where a particular category of people has always been exploited or giving a less amount of rights. Now, if that system persists, can we say that social justice achieved? No. How the social justice can be achieved in that kind of a society when the caste system was completely uh, withdrawn? If you cannot withdrawn completely, but at least you should give a special reservation to the lower caste so that they can compete with the upper caste. So therefore this kind of reconstruction is very important. So this is an also a very important aspect of the concept of social justice. The second type of justice is called economic justice. Now, when we talk about economic justice, basically we are talking about giving adequate economic opportunity to people. So by economic justice, we are talking about giving adequate economic opportunity to all. It does not ensure equal jobs. You cannot ensure equal job because the individuals are different in terms of their skills, their merit. I have already told you that there are difference among people based on their merit. But at least we can uh, ensure the adequate economic opportunity so that everyone would get that adequate equal opportunity for competing for a job. The second one is that economic justice also mean getting fair wages. You cannot discriminate a woman with a man while getting the wage for the similar amount of job. That kind of discrimination should not be conducted. Every single individual should get equal amount of wage, fair amount of wage for the labor they are putting in. So therefore, getting fair wage is another important aspect of economic justice. Economic justice also ensuring economic security for the disadvantaged classes. For example, you are talking about the poor, you are talking about the aged, you are talking about uh, the widows. They are the people who are always in a very disadvantaged classes. So these disadvantaged classes must also get that economic security. So if that economic security is not given to the poor, economic security is not entertained to the lower caste people or to the widow women, the aged person, then we cannot consider it as economic justice. So if you're talking about economic justice, then economic security should also be entertained. Then equal distribution of public wealth and resources. All the public good, public wealth, resources must be equally distributed among people. They cannot have different way of distributing, public good among people. So therefore this is also another important aspect of economic justice. But whenever we talk about economic justice, there are always having different perspectives in economic justice. For example, liberals have their own way of looking at economic justice, and socialists have their own way of looking at economic justice. And there have been a gross debate between liberals versus socialists. Liberals believe that they are talking about free competitions, they are talking about private property, whereas socialists are mainly talking about giving equal distribution of resources. They are not talking about privatization, they are more into public sector. So therefore the distribution of resources according to the liberals, it has to be based on merit, whereas for the socialists it has to be distributive. So there was a gross debate between these two school of thought regarding what do we mean by economic justice. The third kind of justice is called political justice. Now political justice basically mean a justice given to the people in the political realm. Now when you talk about giving justice to the people in the political realm, it basically means equal political rights, ensuring non-discrimination in political realm, and giving respect to the public opinion. Now when we talk about political justice, therefore we are talking about giving equal amount of political rights to the people, where no people have been discriminated in the political fields, where everyone get the equal opportunity to participate, where every public opinion has been respected. That is what we call as political justice. And the last one is, which is indeed a very important type of a justice, is called legal justice. Now as the term says, the idea of justice was actually is a legal concept, and by legal justice is basically mean that how do you ensure justice legally. That means how the justice has been given to the public legally, how it has been given to the public without being discriminating the people. So therefore, when we talk about legal justice, we are talking about formulation of just laws. Formulation of just laws means that law should be created. We should enact such laws which are based on fair amount of consideration. For example, if imagine that if a particular government comes up with a law for giving less income taxes to the corporates and more income taxes to the middle class, is it a fair law? It is obviously not. So therefore, law has to be something which is a just kind of a law. Just law means basically it should be a fair law. So that is another one important aspect of legal justice. The second aspect is ensuring equal legal enactments. Not only laws which are important. If the laws have been made, it has to be enacted. It has to be used equally. For example, if there is a law in a particular nation regarding prohibition of, for example, untouchability, and if you're using it one state and if you're not using it another, that cannot be considered as legal justice. So legal justice basically mean that if a law has been made, it has to be binded upon people, without having any barriers, without having any locality, without looking at race, without looking at gender, caste, economy, class. That is what legal justice is all about. The third aspect of legal justice is related to the idea of rule of law. Now, what does the idea of rule of law mean? The idea of rule of law basically mean that everyone to be considered as equal in front of law. That law is the supreme over everything that happens inside a society. So every individual must get equal amount of legal aspects, protection from the law. That law is a supreme, and being as a supreme a condition within a state, every individual would get equal amount of respect from the system. So therefore, law should be considered as important. So law would not discriminate people. The law is made for the benefit of every section of the society. Every individual would get equal amount of benefits from this law. So this is another important aspects of legal justice. And the last aspect of legal justice is called providing legal security. This is very important. For example, if we talk about India, Indian constitution has a specific provisions for legal security. If you're talking about the fundamental rights perspective, there is an article called Article 32, where the individuals are giving that legal protection of enjoying their rights. If any single individual's rights are being violated by another individual or a group of individual, then that individual can move to the court for the protection of or enjoying of their rights. So that kind of legal security has been given, and if that legal security is not being entertained, then justice cannot be achieved. So therefore, broadly, these are the types of justice. So today in this particular module, we have talked about the meaning of justice, different aspects of justice. We are talking about elements of justice, few definitions of justice. We have talked about the characteristics of justice, and we also talked about the types of justice. So with this, these are the reading lists. You kindly go through this. These are available online. You can download it also, and please keep watching this channel called e-Politica. These are actually created for the benefits of the students, research scholars, and civil service aspirants, and I hope it is for some help to you. Please do subscribe and share the channel among your friends, colleagues, and students if you did not. And if you have any query, please feel free to write to me at gogoi.suseng@gmail.com. And I would also request my students, the listeners, if you have any doubts regarding these modules, do not hesitate to ask me question in the comment section, and also putting a mail to me. And if you need any materials from me, you can also write to me at gogoi.suseng@gmail.com. With this, I signing off. Thank you for watching e-Politica. Keep watching. Stay home. Stay safe. Jai Hind.